Hey, Allison. All right, so we're about to lay the spread. Obviously, this is not the spread. But what I like to do is when things start coming through during shuffling, I just want to make sure I get them on, record them, because sometimes they correlate with the past life and sometimes they don't. So just in case it doesn't, I like to say it anyway in case you can make a connection in some way. But what is coming through right now, at least, there's something about a high up cliff kind of mountain, and it feels like there's a residence on this cliff-like mountain, and it feels like there's something like either it's the solo residence there, so this is someone's mountain, or it's if it's part of any kind of community or neighborhood, it would be at the very end, and that's where it ends, this neighborhood on this cliff kind of mountain type of thing. It's like one of those jagged peaks. It's something you would see in a movie. It's very high up, very steep. It's not where you can jump into the ocean. You don't want to do that from this height. So it's very high, very elevated, and the word elevated came through. So just in case you can make any kind of connection with that, it could be that. That's the kind of aesthetic that you like or prefer. It could be that you may be fearful of heights, and this might be coming through to show another time when something may have happened where heights might have been an issue. This could also mean that you adore heights. You love heights. You love seeing things from a vantage point. The idea of being cliffside, the idea of having a house on a cliffside, maybe that's a romantic ideal kind of notion to you. Maybe that's a dream house to you. I don't know, it could be the kind of thing even where you're watching a movie, and if they have that kind of aesthetic in a movie or in a book or in a movie or whatever, that kind of thing can really like appeal to you. So you just want to look for emotions where, when I say triggered, it would be like a pull, a love for, that kind of thing, or even a fear of, right? So it's like, how does this visual, how does it affect you? That's what we're looking for here. Okay, no, so now I'm going to go ahead and lay the spread. Alright, so here we have your past life spread. Alright, so what we're going to do is look at where you were, what you did with the majority of your time there, an important day with the relationship and feelings involved, another important day, relationships, feelings, with the death and lesson learned, and we'll get hints of time throughout. Alright, so all I'm going to do is relay to you the imagery and impressions that are already coming through, and your job is going to be to try to make connections where you can based off of what comes through here and your current life, and I'll try to help however I can. Okay, so just keep in mind there are a couple of ways to make connections. There's direct connections and opposite connections. Direct connections is when you can directly connect or resonate with the information coming through. And opposite is the kind of thing where if we see someone drown in another life, a lot of times they may come back and be fearful of bodies of water or of drowning without knowing why, or that kind of thing. So just keep an open mind as to how you can make connections to this kind of thing. And your job is also connect where you can, resonate with what you can, but in case you don't connect with something, you just want to tuck it in the back of your mind for a later time, because things come up in the days, weeks, months, year later kind of thing, and it might click later. So just keep that in mind. All right. Okay. So what I'd like to say first of all is where we're going to start is Asia. So this is the Asia card, and this is distinctly putting us, all the Asian countries on the Asian continent kind of thing. There's something about sweeping to, what's that called? That is the East Coast. So we're going more east than west. If we were like to, let's say, divide down the half kind of thing, we go east, and or whatever country we're in, it would be the east side. So let's just see what's going on here. So there is distinctly a mountain here, and I feel like this is something that has to do with what the first part of the reading was, where it was talking about that, like, that residence on a mountain, except it feels like it's not the same one coming through the imagery, but it's the same aesthetic, and it's the same kind of like feeling of like this lone structure on a mountain top to get to the top of a mountain. There's something about it now, this one that's coming through feels like there's something that is not residential about it, even though people live there. I feel like this is a place that we would perhaps visit today as like a heritage site. Like, it feels that old. It feels very old, almost like what we might call like a monastery type of thing, even though wherever this is, they might not call it that, but that's what we would call it. I get, like, you know, like if we don't have the actual language, the word in the language that it's in, it would be translated in English as like monastery. That's what this feels like. So it also feels like the aspect of you coming through. There's something about finding your way to the monastery And I'm just trying to piece together what's going on here. Okay, so first of all, how you might be able to connect to this would be, again, the aesthetic of the idea of like seeing like a monastery or almost like a temple, or, you know, one of those, just a structure where you know it has to do with spirituality, we could say, on a mountain. Is there something like that? It's a very specific aesthetic. It gives off a very specific vibe. If you've ever enjoyed that, or you felt connected to that, or even something like you've always wanted to visit a monastery, like maybe you know one in particular that you just always wanted to see, or could be in this area of the world. So have you been drawn to countries on the Asian continent, or that are considered Asian? I feel like we are looking at a country that is more mainland, not like Japan, but more like, quite frankly, I want to say like Tibet, Thailand, or Tibet. There's something with a T there. The T is distinct in the name, so you might be making connections with that, just in the case that you ever wanted to visit that place. Now here's the thing, if you haven't, then what you want to do is Google imagery of something like monastery on Tibetan mountain or Thai mountain. You know what I mean? Find an image and see how it makes you feel when you sit there and kind of absorb the image. And kind of, that's basically reading energy, but it's like, how do you feel? Do you feel pulled to it? Is it intriguing to you? Does it feel familiar or comfortable, or just, again, something that pulls at you, right? So that's how you could be making connections. Let's see. The opposite connection to this would be if you really just like to stay away from religious institutions or structures, if that makes sense. Like they just kind of put you off. That would be opposite, because it feels like your life is spent either here, where we're talking about, or near it. Almost like, I feel like the place that we're looking at here is something that is known in the land, and it feels like people are either sent there or they pilgrimage, is that the word? There, they find their way there essentially, either to learn, to go on retreat, to take up the lifestyle there. Something about that. So again, any connection you can make even to the monastic lifestyle kind of deal. This would be the same thing as if you, maybe when you're, it could be when you were younger or now or whenever, if you were ever, I know this is random, but ever called to like the nunnery, like the idea of being with a sisterhood, or the idea of a brotherhood, or, you see what I'm saying? Just like a group that comes together with similar spiritual values and principles is what we're looking at. Where does that play in your life? Are you finding yourself drawn to that now? What's coming up with that, basically? And if you don't connect, that's perfectly fine. It could be that it may be coming up later. So just something to, or it could be that this is even coming up just to like kind of get you looking at some photos and just like going down a little bit of a rabbit hole to see where it leads you. Some domino effect kind of thing. So use this as you deem fit, if that makes sense. All right. So what you do with the majority of your time, this is life of leisure. So it's interesting because I feel like you are being sent to this place, and it has to do with your family and the structure of the family. And I feel like it has to do with almost like, hold on. Yeah. So it feels like you're born into a family that is affluent, essentially, in this region. But I feel like you are like something like the second son. So it feels like there's something that is requiring something from you that is not what the first son is required to do, such as like producing an heir kind of thing. This could, basically, it feels like this family is equal to what we would consider aristocracy kind of thing. I don't know about royalty, but it's like there's something about this family that is like steeped in a lineage and wealth. And it feels like there's like a point you've reached where you're sent to this place. So I'm just trying to see if it's like for a life, or for your life, or if it's for like a retreat or something. But it feels like this is not uncommon or out of the ordinary. So what you want to do is go ahead and Google and see about family dynamics or hierarchies, and if it's like find where it might be typical for the son for like a son, like, and it's a son, not a daughter, like son, to be sent to a religious institution. I want to say try Tibet, Thailand, and there might be one other around that area, but you want to just see what you can if you can find anything on Google or anything like that. Now, this might be coming through because in your current life, you could have chosen to be born in a certain like us, you know, like as the oldest child, as the middle child, as the youngest child. Basically, a direct connection would be if you were born as the like second in line kind of thing. So you were given more liberty in your current life to kind of choose your own path and less responsibility or burden, so to speak, in the family dynamics, as opposed to like the oldest child. However, the opposite connection would be if you decided to come back in a different dynamic, such as the older child, to experience different expectations and a different path in life, and maybe even more of like a responsibility to meet those different expectations than they were here. I feel like the biggest expectation here, it's not about like going to the monastery and becoming an excellent nun or an excellent monk. I can't speak today. It's not about becoming like the best. I feel like it's just performing the duty of going, versus like, let's say it's the first son, let's say you're like older brother or whatever, he has to actually perform, like he has to produce heirs, like he has to like turn out products essentially. You just have to follow the rules and do what you're told. And I feel like the life of leisure card comes up because you understand that you would prefer this compared to the older brother position, role, expectations, whatever. So it would be interesting to know how you decided to come back into your current life, you know, even the only child too. That would be all the responsibility and all the attention and you know, this is a completely different dynamic. So here we are looking at what feels like the second child. Now this can also be if in your current life, you've always felt second, or you've always put yourself second, or you're the one that will take the, like if there's a meal, you're the one that will take the lesser quality food and save the best piece for whoever else is with you. Like you automatically go to the default of second best, therefore I only like am allowed to do this. So it's almost like if you connect with that, we're looking at a message of making sure that you are giving yourself permission in places where you find yourself either not giving it or seeking outside of yourself for it. And what I mean by that is also like, where are you holding back yourself in the realm of giving yourself pleasure in this life? You know, like where are you holding yourself back from pursuing pleasures and passions and interests in your life? Maybe, right? So it's just how you connect with that, because the opposite connection would be, okay, I'm second here, not happening again. I'm coming back and I am ruling the school. You know what I mean? So it's like, did you come back and in your current life instead, are you someone that's like demanding of high quality treatment, you know, and you have no problem taking the best, and this is all good stuff too, you know, you have no problem prioritizing yourself, that kind of thing. But if not, then it would be the direct connection would be you come back and you don't prioritize yourself. And if that's the case and you're aware of that, because this would be like kind of a check-in to see where you're not giving yourself permission, where you're not prioritizing yourself when you can. And you look at that, and those areas would be linked to a message here, which would be to make sure you are taking steps in at least acknowledging the areas in your life where you may be requiring permission outside of yourself to do what you love or to go a certain way, and taking steps to being like, no, I don't need permission from anyone but myself. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do that. Even if it's baby steps, because it might sound simple, but it is hard to make those kinds of changes if you're in that mindset of kind of always defaulting to second best kind of thing. This does not mean second best in like intellect or creativity or, you know, academia. It doesn't mean second best like that. It's more we're looking at a second best mindset of your self-worth, essentially. So that's what we want to get to here. So just keep making connections where you can with this, but the leisure card refers to being born into a family where it is a leisurely life, and then going to this monastery, knowing that you come from that family. It's almost like these sons that come to the monastery, because I feel like you're not the only one. It feels like they're not like, you have to follow the rules there. I don't feel like you're like a rebel, but it's also like they do treat you respectfully because they are aware of where, where you're from, and also the family. There's something about contributing financially or contributing resources to the monastery to take you on, kind of like a dowry in a way. So with that said, it's almost like I'm asking questions, I'm like, well, is there anything having to do with like not being able to marry or anything like that? Because it feels like you're there for a time. This doesn't feel like a short time. This feels like years practicing, learning this. I don't feel like you don't have a say in it, but I also feel like you were raised kind of aware that this would be the path, so you've already succumbed to it in a sense where you feel like you've chosen it in a sense. So this can also mean that you might have chosen to come back into a family where you were just raised without question that you would be in a certain place in your life by a certain age, and that you would have a certain education by a certain age, and that you would be walking a certain path by a certain age, perhaps even in the family business or the same industry as your parents or something like that, something that is not too outside of the realm of their normalcy of what they do or what the family does or that kind of thing. So it's like almost like we want to see what is your connection with your family and what you've pursued for your lifestyle, because this can also be if you were expected to, go to school and then get married and have kids and produce a family, and so even if it's a mom and a housewife kind of thing, does that fit into the role that you were kind of fed as you grew up as the expectation of your life? So that's what we're looking at really, is what program were you fed as a child that you kind of took on as your own and feels quite natural and normal to you, but looking back you might realize, oh, I really wasn't even told that there was any other way to go about this. Just in case you can connect with that. So if that's the case and there is a connection like that in your life, there would be a message here just to start taking a look at it and understanding that some things are programmed, and to look and see what programming might be almost like blocking you from even dabbling with ideas, creative ideas or otherwise, as far as like who your identity is and what your role is in life and things like that. Where is it almost like blocked where you might otherwise have been curious to look, you know what I mean, for lack of better words. But so keep making connections with that and these ideas, and whatever you do connect with, this is for you to just kind of like food for thought, sit and process, that kind of thing. Also like little formulas to start moving ahead and expanding your consciousness, and even like some things in manifesting abundance and happiness and things like that. So it's like if you're in a state where you feel uncertain or unsettled or like in limbo or even unhappy, this would be coming through as like a knock, knock, knock. Hey, you want to feel a little better about those things? Why don't you try taking a peek at some of this in your life and see where you might be holding yourself back here or limiting yourself here. And then let's, maybe even put boundaries with certain people here, and then start moving down the path after that, you know what I mean? Because then that clears up space. It's like the visual is coming through almost like this highway, all right? Imagine like this highway. There's no cars or anything, just a highway, a big road, going a great distance, and it's all cluttered with garbage, and the garbage is like cluttered high and like piles and piles, and that's all programming from things you picked up and been taught as a kid, not stuff you put there yourself. And the more you realize, wow, this is a really dirty highway, but this is not even my garbage. This needs to be cleaned up. Like, I want my highway clear. You start going through all the garbage, and in order to get rid of it, though, you have to like see what it is, and then it'll like disappear once you like approach it and acknowledge it and be like, oh, this is from when they told me that I should be married by 25. Oh, this is when they told me that, I should get a graduate degree, like that kind of thing, where these ideas were planted in your being and not really again, not like develop there yourself, if that makes sense. So it'll clear the highway. But and it's not saying that those things are not valuable. If you have value with those concepts, that's great and fine. You want to find the things that you feel are at a dissonance with your values, like your code of whatever. And when you can feel the dissonance, and those are the things you want to like really look at and really like take a look and see if you still want them as part of your programming, we should say. Because I don't know what that's what's coming up and that's what's coming through. So I'm just saying it, and whether it connects now, that's great. If not, again, you want to tuck in the back of your mind for a later time. So keep making connections where you can here. This could be that you were born into an affluent family in this life as well as a direct connection. An opposite connection would be if you are self-made and you were born into a family where you had to work your way up in order to have a better lifestyle than the generations that came before you. That would be the opposite connection, because our soul likes to experience different things like that, because there's a lot of lessons, a lot of awesome lessons that come from that too. Alright, so keep making connections. We're going to go to the first important day. Alright, so the first important day here, we have the Mother Nature card, which is usually natural disasters. Sometimes the Mother Nature card is about what's going on within us, within you, as a person, because things can be happening within the body and the mind and the spirit. And this is the Friends card for relationships, and the feeling is gratitude. So what we're seeing here, so what happens basically is you get there, you get to the monastery, and to you, I feel like you arrive as what they would consider, what we might call someone of more of a surface level personality, maybe even shallow or egotistical, like compared to, we'll say, people of lesser means in this region. I'm not saying like this does not feel like you're, again, a rebel or an a-hole or like anything bad at all. It just feels like someone who is more in touch with their surface level kind of ego side, just simply because it feels like where you grew up or how you grew up in the family, that like how you're raised. It feels like there isn't, first of all, it feels like there's like no physical affection, not really affectionate, feels very reserved, not mean or cold, but just reserved and just polite, civil, you know, that kind of thing. So there hasn't been, I want to say, large emotional outputs. I don't know, it's that kind of thing. So it feels like when you get there, you're at that place in your mentality and emotionality and spirituality. And I feel like when you get there, we'll say the brothers there, the brotherhood, the monastery, the monks, the monkship, it feels like they're aware. It's almost like these people are so in tune with themselves that they're able to read you quite easily and see what they're kind of getting on their plate, so to speak, when you come there almost immediately, almost like they can read energy, they can read aura, and they can just tell right away, just as you advance towards them, okay, we see you, come on in. And I feel like it's a bit of a hard adjustment for you. I feel like there's something that happens right away where you are, it's like a vow of silence almost, I want to say, for a week or a month. It's unexpected. Like I feel like maybe you heard that might happen, but you thought that like, oh, there's no way. And this, I feel like, is specifically to combat the ego, is the silence, because you're someone whose voice is heard above others usually. And I'm not saying like, because here, remember, your second son, I'm talking about in the region, like when you walk in a room, like just because of who your family is, you have it's privilege is what we're looking at. So so it feels like this vow of silence was given to you right away just to combat the privilege. And it does, it definitely, it almost like gives you what's called an ego death, like almost like, I also want to say you're a strong spirit and also stubborn. So I feel like it takes like a couple of weeks until it like kicks in, where it's almost like you started up. First of all, you're like, no way, I really have to. And then you do it and you're like, fine, I'm not just going to do this. I'm going to excel, right? Like that kind of thing. And like 2 weeks in, it's like you break, you know, and it's like, you don't break the vow, you just break. Like there's an ego death. There's like an aha moment of some kind wash over you that you can't even articulate. But it changes you, like your perception levels up even in just that time, because this is really difficult. Not to mention, it's almost like a culture shock because you're away from your family in this new lifestyle that I feel like you really did not believe you would linger there long. It's really interesting. So we're getting hit in the ego. So in your current life, you could be someone who, I want to say, maybe at a very young age got rid of the ego, or was aware of the ego, or doesn't like the ego, or maybe You might be someone who can easily feel the ego in other people, and you know immediately these are not my people. Or it could be that you're finding that out now, that you're able to feel it out and understand what the ego even sounds like or feels like in other people. And it's a superpower when you can do that, because that can be immediate. Oh no, that's going to be toxic, let's boundary up. You know what I mean? So if you've had to work on boundary setting, and energy reading, if you're into energy reading, if you know this about yourself, if you know you can pick up people's energy, that would come from here as well. Because I also feel like in this silent retreat, or this silent vow, it feels like it like cracks open your intuition, because up until now there was no silence for you. So this is like a whole new experience, which, by the way, this might be coming through in your current life. In case you are looking to do a practice for yourself that is going to level up your intuition or expand your consciousness in like, I hate to say quickly, because you should be going at your own pace on your journey, of course. But if you're like one of those people that likes a good little extreme like boost of the intuition kind of thing, like doing these practices, trying new things, it's the same feeling of like, I'm gonna do ayahuasca. And in case you don't know what ayahuasca is, just go check out ayahuasca. It's, you know, a root made into a tea. It's a psychedelic experience done by a shaman. It's all watched over. It's, you know, more or less safe. But it's also an extreme thing to do to boost your journey or your spiritual path, like to boost you to the next spiritual chapter. That's what this feels like. This silent treatment was used for, was to boost you, and man, it did. Like, it really did. And you thought, it was like almost like you thought, this is stupid here, you know, like, what's this gonna do? That stubbornness. So also in your current life, if you're stubborn, and that's not bad, you know, it's just that if you find yourself that you are stubborn, or if you have a little tinge of a bit of a know-it-all kind of thing about you, and that's not bad either, it's human, but that could come from a lingering sense of this aristocratic kind of mindset here. Okay, so the mother nature day, does that mother nature kind of thing, this is within you. This is not happening externally. This is not a storm. This is, well, if it's a storm, it's within you, but this is, we're looking at an ego death, and it's almost like a changing of your DNA makeup is what this feels like. Like your spiritual DNA is charging up, leveling up, altering, changing, shifting, whatever is happening. Because it's allowing, there's something like it feels like in this silence, your neurological pathways are being changed. Like, blocked paths are becoming unblocked, and paths that you usually take are giving way to the unblocked paths now, the new paths. And this is expanding the consciousness. This is doing its job. So it could be that you in your current life came in pretty intuitive already, because it's like it cracked open here. Okay, it could be that this is also coming through in case you're going through an ego death now. It's kind of like a taste of humble pie kind of thing, but it's also quite empowering as well, because again, it does kind of bring up the superpowers, we could say, where you are usually able to feel energy more, other people's energy around you, and also tap into yourself and align yourself in that way. So anyway, we are seeing the shifting and everything happening, where it's almost like, I want to say, you are becoming aligned with your higher self for the very first time here. And this Friends card is when you realize that the people at the monastery, though you've known them for a very short amount of time, have more authenticity and authentic respect for you, just as a human being, than everyone and anyone you have met in your life and lifestyle back home with your family. In just the, like, I want to say within the month, you realize, wow, this is what authentic is. I've never experienced it firsthand. I've only heard about it. So we're looking here at the idea of learning things in theory versus practicing them. And I want to say, in the case that you have been studying something or learning something, that it's time to put it into practice. And not just that, but you're capable of doing that. And here's the thing too, there's something about this that I feel like if there is something you want to practice, it's going to feel so natural to you that you might even think you didn't do it. That you might think it's not happening. Whatever practice it might be. Whether it's like breath work, or whether it's channeling, reading energy, whatever it might be, it might feel so natural to you that you might mistake it for not being what it is. So I feel like that's coming through just in case that happens, so that you can be like, oh, okay, no, it's just that it's natural, it is happening, this is working, okay? Because it's very subtle. It feels like and if you're not practicing anything now, whatever may be coming up for you as you move down your journey, keep this in mind, because I feel like this will be useful in helping you identify and really get a handle on your abilities, whatever they may be, because it feels like there are abilities, and it feels like they were cracked open here. This feels old. This feels like, it feels like when you read in school or you hear about like the ancient dynasties, right? It feels like you're living among the dynasties that we learn about that made like some of the biggest, or like the biggest impact of the time, like that kind of thing. Like this feels not ancient. Maybe it is ancient. Maybe that time is ancient. But it doesn't feel, when I say ancient, I think of like cavemen, ancient, primitive. I don't feel like this is primitive. It feels like there's a lot of opulence in the city. It feels like there's a lot of entertainment and like nightlife and, you know, like stuff going on, but it's not modern. This is like, what I would say is Google, like, first of all, see if in Tibet or Thailand, if they have big families, we'll say like how China has an empire, if these countries that we talk about here, if they had like starter families that grew into royalty or something like that, we're looking at that time when it was a rich, like in a rich, growing state. That would be the time period. And so you might connect with that, by the way, in case you do connect to these countries in the first place, if you connect to Asian culture in that way, but Thai culture, and it could be in the art, the literature, the music, if you see it in movies, if you read about it in books, or you've heard, you know, there's news on or anything like that, and you feel pulled to it in some way. But as far as history goes, that time period, old times way back, if you've been pulled to those ancient times, the old times, the times when civilization was there, it was rich and it was growing and it was like thriving, but it was still very old. So we're not looking primitive. We're looking at a fully functioning, like, what is it called? Empire. It's just that the words are different. Like, I know, like, these people would use different words. I know it. And not just the language barriers, like a different word. But anyway, that's what's coming through. So just keep making connections with what we're talking about there. Now, the gratitude card is a big one, because we were explaining how when this happened to you after the vow of silence, and it feels like these people do silent vows maybe quarterly, like, you know, every year they do it like 4 times a year, or seasonally. It's like a normal thing for them. And he just got this aspect just got put on the silent thing just to kind of give you a good little like knock in the noggin to begin. And but it feels like here, this is when you realize we were talking about, you know, the authentic nature of the people and how they're so respectful and they're honest and they're transparent and they're genuine, that kind of thing. And you realize these people are more your friends than any of the friends that you've had growing up in your youth, in your childhood, as you learn in your school, at your family, whatever it is, your cousins, whatever it is, because their lifestyle is so different. You realize, like, these are actually real friends. I didn't even realize that. Or it's like they're a different level of friends. So we're looking at you bonding with these people as you become accustomed to the lifestyle and realize that there's something about this lifestyle that truly, like, is in touch with life. That the other lifestyle you're from, the wealthier, more lavish lifestyle, there's something where it's almost like lackluster, even though there's a lot of shiny things there. You know what I mean? All that glitters isn't gold kind of thing. But the gratitude comes in because you're learning to be grateful for small things, and that is raising your vibration here big time. And they can see it and they know what's going on, but you don't realize it. All you do is that all it's happening inside you are these subtle kind of like these subtle shifts and movements of your perspective and understanding and thought patterns that you don't really realize change because it's so gradual and subtle. But when you look back after a year, after 5 years, you're a different person. So that might be a message in itself to you in your current life. Almost like cut yourself some slack if you're hard on yourself, because in a year you're going to look back and see all the immense progress and see that you have changed and you have become a different version of yourself. In fact, you may have stepped into the version of yourself you always wanted to be. You just couldn't see yourself doing it because it happened so gradually and subtly with every baby step you take towards that. You know what I mean? That's how we change our reality. It's like when we look back, we're like, oh my God, I'm living a completely different life than I was a year ago. I'm a completely different person. However you might connect with that, and also you might connect with this in the way of who you surround yourself with. You might be very aware that it's time to get rid of some toxic people that maybe you've had your whole life, like friends, family, that they've always been there because they've always been there. And there's really no other reason why they're still there, because the connection is not authentic or transparent or good feeling, or these are people that would discourage you. These are not people that are encouraging of your journey and what you want to do. That's how you kind of spot them. You are excited about something and they're the ones that come up with the, well, yeah, but yes, you know, like that kind of thing, where they don't encourage your growth. These are people that want you to stay the same, because change is scary and nobody wants to have to relearn people as they change, right? Well, no, your tribe does. Your tribe will understand that we evolve. Even every day we evolve, you know, every minute we can be evolving, and our tribe, these are the people that will embrace our changes and encourage it, even if it means taking distance or not seeing each other for a long time or cutting cords. They would understand why that would have to happen. It's because it's part of the evolutionary journey, you know. Those are your people. But this is coming up because it might be that there might be people that you're still keeping around you that may not serve your energy the best to keep it in your energy field, so to speak. So having those people that don't serve you, that you know are toxic or not good for you, and if they're coming to mind right now, if someone's coming to mind right now, that's probably who, if it's one or more people. But once you clear space of them, that allows people to come into your life to fill that space that have your best interests in mind, right? That's for your tribe. So make sure you're clearing your space so you can bring in the authentic people into your life that speak your language, if that makes sense. So keep making connections where you can with that, understanding too that keep putting yourself in that gratitude frequency. You might hear about it, and you might even be sick of hearing about it, but maybe not. But it's very real. Like it's very real, especially I want to say if you are trying to manifest something, especially like, you know, if you're just on that manifestation abundance kind of thing, just keep looking at what you already have and adore it. Just adore what you already have. Find whatever, even if you just have to look at your hands and be like, I'm so grateful to have fingers on my hands. Hopefully you have all your fingers when I say that. But you know what I mean? Just even if it's the smallest thing, you want to focus on what you have, so that you are sending out the signal to the universe to boomerang back more things that you love, you know? That's just so the universe reflects the same frequency you're putting out there. So I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for that. And you'll just keep getting things that you're grateful for, you know? It's as simple or as complex as you'll make it. So keep making connections where you can here. And this can also, by the way, be that you might be very aware of when you are going through changes and when you are stepping into a new version of yourself. When you are altering on the inside, you could be very in tune with yourself because of what's happened here. Especially the place where he is with the people he's at. He's becoming very in tune and aligned over the course of the years. He's learning their practices. He's becoming a completely different version of himself than how he started out before. And I feel like this keeps coming up because you're on that same journey, whether you realize it or not. But when you realize it, it makes it so much more sacred. Like, it makes it seem so much, like you're able to consciously, when you're able to consciously evolve, it is fascinating and it is fun and it is intriguing. But when you're unconsciously evolving, it can be scary and volatile and it can be disruptive. So this is just a calling to be as conscious as you can as you evolve, as you move forward, as you evolve into the next version of yourself. And there's going to be many, many versions, right? So keep that in your mind and keep making connections wherever you can here. And we're going to go to the next important day. So here, the next important day. This is the graduation card. Sometimes it means academics, academia, you know, graduating. But oftentimes it's a graduation. We're seeing a leveling up of mentality, emotionality, physicality, or spirituality. And sometimes they all go together, right? A lot of times they all go together. But the relationship here is family. And the feeling card here is distant and removed. And basically what we were talking about before just now was the cutting of ties to create space. Here, this is the years have gone by. There are at least, I want to say by this point we're kind of coming up on a decade is what this feels like. And this place is home. And these people, the monks who you're with, they're your family now. And your family, they're not your heart and soul family. They're your blood family. So this is a message of however you might connect with the idea that you create your family. Blood is not thicker than water. Sorry about any sounds in the background. Blood is not thicker than water. You have every right to cut ties with actual family members, and you have every right to call a friend a sister or a brother or even a mother. You know what I mean? Like, you get to write your narrative. You get to pick your family. And I feel like that's very important because a lot of people do hold on to their family who really mistreat them and hold them back and are very toxic and even abusive. But they'll hold on to them because they've been taught family loyalty is the most important thing. Blood is thicker than water, like that kind of thing. And people stick with these people when really one of the lessons of their life was to be born into such an abusive or toxic family that you learn the boundaries and you learn to get away from it. And yet they'll stick around, you know, that kind of thing. So just in the case that you might connect with that in any way, of turning friends into family. So we are seeing a graduation of these monk people who become your first real friends to becoming your first family, like that you choose, and you choose them. And it feels like at this point, communication with your family is at a bare minimum simply because of the contributions they're making or have made to the monastery. Just based out of civil politeness, maybe a handwritten letter. And I say that because it doesn't feel like there's anything you could type on in this time anyway. But it feels like, you know, you do maybe write them, but there's no visitation. There's no missing them. There's a letting go and a peace about it. And it's almost like they're characters to you in like a story at this point. It just feels like it feels how it feels when you cross over into just a different reality where it's almost like if you're writing a letter to them, it's almost like you're writing a letter to a character in a book. Like they don't really exist inside the same reality that you exist in. That's how your mind here and your emotions and your understanding of yourself and the world and whatever it might be, that's how much you've grown and leveled up. That's where the leveling up card comes. You're just like, you are in a completely different reality. So in your current life, you might find yourself in a similar situation where you feel like you are in your own world and there are people that almost like you feel untouchable or unreachable, and that certain people are just no longer maybe even able to perceive your presence anymore because you are in just a different reality as you go through life and become more in tune and aligned with yourself. And that is, believe it or not, a very normal feeling to feel when you're on your spiritual journey. So don't feel, just in case you connect with that, and in case you may feel guilty or bad or whatever it might be when it comes to feeling distance from people that you once were close with, that's part of the journey. And part of it also is learning to be at peace with that and understanding why that might be happening and that it is not just normal, but good and meant to be that way. All right. So just keep making connections where you can with that. So the thing is with the distant remove card, that's what I mean is like a whole different, you're like worlds apart. Even if you were standing next to each other, you're perceiving a different reality than they are perceiving. And this is also the thing where you might have heard of like 3D versus 5D, like that kind of thing. Like if you've heard of the whole ascension thing, the 5D thing, you know, if that's part of your reality at all, it's because you are ascending to a different reality than probably a lot of people from your past are, you know? And it's not to compare. It's not better or worse. It's a different journey, but it is different. And it's like as much, it's like if you're able to just kind of step into that, what's it called? Acceptance of it. That also calls in the tribe. That also calls in your people too. Because then you're aligning with the reality of others in your reality at that vibrational level, so to speak, that frequency, the frequency of gratitude, the world where where people are at gratitude level, we'll say, then you're able to make friends there, and those are your people. And the others, they just, you know, may not even perceive you. Or if they see you, they just, it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like when you become like a background character, or they do. It's just, you know, it's kind of an interesting thing. So, I guess just make connections where you can with that. And, yeah, I'm seeing if there's anything here else that wants to come through here. I feel like, the last thing I want to say about this is how quickly it happened. In two ways. How, it's almost like time's an illusion. Before you know it, 10 years have passed, blink of an eye. So it's almost like no time at all. So there's that. And then also, when you just let go and gave in to the practice of this place, to being part of this reality, everything, the leveling up happened so quickly. Because there was no more, it's like there was a time where you wanted to control things like you did in your other life, in your past here. You know, like when you were with your family, there's a lot of control. It's just part of being part of that kind of family in that society. But when you were able to let go of the control and just kind of live like you saw your monks, these monks here, when you just like lived among them, it was so much easier when there wasn't resistance. So I feel like that's what's coming through too, in the way of making sure that you are checking in with yourself, that if you're on your leveling up journey, so to speak, if you're looking to expand your consciousness and work with your gifts and abilities, to find the places where you are resisting in life and somehow accept it in a way that lets it go, lets control go, like lets go of wanting to control what you're resisting. I know that's easier said than done. I know that's kind of abstract to say it that way. But look where you are resisting, where your thoughts are resisting, where your emotions are resisting. And then see what your control over that area of resistance, see how it's playing into your perception of your reality. And then what is making you still want to control or hold on to something that you're able to let go of. I know it's again, easier said than done. Or maybe you're in the middle of this. Maybe you've done this before. Maybe this is what you work on. You know what I mean? Like maybe you just have to, maybe you're a master at this, because this guy becomes a master because he lives among them. He practices too. He becomes a spiritual master in his own right. So this is the soul that we're bringing into your current life. So understand that you already are a spiritual master. When you understand that and you're aware of that, you can tap into this any time. And maybe you already are tapped in, you know? But maybe when you tap in, you don't trust it. And this would be telling you to trust it. So just make connections where you can. And what you don't connect with, of course, just tuck in the back of your mind. And we're going to go ahead and go to the death card. So this is the burn baby burn card. And we get this when people are burning at the stake, burning in a house fire or something. It's like they're smoking, so, you know, that kind of thing. Trying to feel what's coming through here. Okay, so this is not, the death itself isn't coming through because the death feels like a natural death. Almost like going into a meditative sleep, like they do, which Google that, by the way. There's something about like sleeping, meditating into a death sleep. But I feel like this fire is here to show that there was a ritual afterwards that it had to do with fire. And I don't know if it's if it's similar to what we do. What do we do when we turn people into, come on, when you The only thing that's coming to my mind is like mummifying people, but it's not, that's not the word. It's, you know, when we turn people into ashes. I don't know if that's happening here because it won't even let me think of the word that I do know the word of. Instead, it's mummifying. So I wonder if there's just a ritual where fire is involved, or if possibly the last night you went to sleep, you had a fire on, like fireplace. I don't feel like this touched your skin. So I don't know. But if, based on what I'm feeling here, you in your current life would actually use fire for ritual, whereas in other readings, most other readings, it's like, oh, you're scared, you might be fearful of fire, you might have a phobia of flames, you might want not like the heat of flames. This even if you haven't discovered what kind of modalities you want to use, you're still a healer. And maybe you already have. So just keep making connections where you can with that. But if you've ever wondered, you know, do I have healing abilities? Yes, like adamantly. Again, we said the word master here. So yeah. Okay, so let's go to the lesson. So this is the compromise card. And what this feels like it connects with is when you came to the monastery, that first big like silence thing that happened, there's a bit of a terror because you thought, I'm gonna have to compromise my happiness, my way of being. I'm gonna have to compromise who I am. Basically, you thought you were making a sacrifice for your family that would ultimately lead to the most unhappy life. Like, I have to be here with them. Like, for how long? I have to be silent. Like, almost like you felt like you were being punished. And I feel like this is a big deal because oftentimes what we see as a punishment can end up being the best thing for us, or what we see as something that might be, you know what it is when something is, when you're really scared of something and they say, if you fear that, you need to go towards that and conquer that shit. You know what I mean? Like, excuse my language. But that's what this feels like, is whenever you're in a position where you feel like you can't do it, or why is this happening, or if you're scared to do something, if it feels really risky, but you feel pulled toward it anyway, there are different scenarios where it's like you just feel like off balance, unsure, not good. You know, you feel, but it's not your intuition saying this isn't good. You just find yourself in a position where you're like, I've never been here before and this is scary. And if you just breathe and trust the process and move through it, you're going to find rewards on the other side of that. And that's what I feel like happened here, is he thought he was compromising his happiness, but it was actually leading to the ultimate happiness as he found his true family. When in the beginning of the cycle, he thought he was leaving his true family. He felt almost like, I want to say, discarded. But in feeling discarded, he was actually being accepted into his real family. It just, he didn't see it because he was blind. His ego was in play and he was spiritually blind to it. And it just took the process and sticking it out to see that it was truly, he was being led to the treasure. So it's that kind of thing. That's the journey. So keep making connections when it comes to that. And anyway, there is your past life. I hope you were able to make some connections. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, what you didn't make connections with, if you didn't make connections, tuck in the back of your mind. You never know what's coming up, but I feel like it's gonna be really interesting and I'm really excited for you. So thanks for letting me read you.